Greetings and welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Sean and the website is www.scriptureandprophecy.com. Today is Friday, November 10th, 2017. And we are reading from the Gospels today. We're doing our Gospel portion today, which is today Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 23. Now, you've heard this story a million times, right? About the Magi coming and bringing gifts to the Christ child, and you've heard the story, you've read it a million times. But I bet you there's some things you hadn't thought about that I'm going to share with you today, and I think you're going to be blessed by it, as I myself have been blessed by it. So that's what we're going to be looking into today. If you're new to the broadcast, once a week we do what we call a gospel portion, and we read from the Gospels every week, a different passage, and within a year's time we will have read through the entire Gospels. And so that's kind of what we're up to. We also read from the Torah twice a week, and we do a prophecy podcast, which used to be on Friday, but lately it's just been working out for me to do it on Monday mornings. And so hopefully this podcast is a blessing to all of you. All right, let's get started, because I'm going to stop several times to commentate on some things, and maybe some things that you've never heard before. And I think what I'm going to share with you right now may be something you've never heard before, as we get just a couple of verses into chapter 2. So Matthew chapter 2. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod of the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and we are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard all these things, he was troubled, and all of Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and the scribes of the people together, and he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Let's stop right there, because we have a couple of things to discuss. First thing I want to share with you that I have to give credit to the chronological Gospels for understanding this thought process. You have these wise men. Okay, they're coming to see the Christ child, to bring extravagant gifts. I believe it'll go into detail here in a minute. Frankincense and myrrh and gold, and some big dollar stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with frankincense. We use frankincense in this household. Just a little tiny bottle is extremely expensive. Gold, gifts, myrrh is another. It's another essential oil that's extremely expensive, especially in large quantities. And here's something I never thought of before, but it's pointed out in the chronological Gospels that these were, well, let me just read the commentary out of this real quick, and then I'll just kind of elaborate on it, because I want to make sure I do justice to it. So let me pull this up here. The timing of the astronomers arriving in Jerusalem is based on their pre-dawn observation of his star, standing directly over Bethlehem, that's Bethlehem, on the morning of their leaving Jerusalem. Astronomical observation. The Greek word Magi is a common term for astronomers from the land of Chaldea. So what the first thing he's trying to point out is these were astronomers, and they're from the lands of Chaldea, which would have been like Babylon. Daniel, Chananiah, Azariah, and Mishael were among the members of the royal family who were trained in the Torah and Hebrew astrophysics in Jerusalem. As captives of Babylon, they were also trained in Chaldean mathematics, science, and astronomy. Daniel was the overseer of all the astronomers in Babylon for more than 60 years. So maybe you're starting to connect the dots. Do you ever wonder how these wise men from Babylon had any idea about the prophecies of the Messiah? How they would know what to look for, how they would know the timing? Well, if you remember, Daniel knew the timing. The prophecy was given to him. He was, for 60 years, the leader over all the Chaldeans. Over all the astronomers. Is it possible that the reason that these astronomers knew, these wise men, by the way, it doesn't say there were 3 wise men, it just says wise men. It could have been 50 for all we know. Is it possible that they knew about all this because of all the information that Daniel left for them to know what to look for? And so here they are, they know when, they know what to be looking for because of the prophet Daniel, because of his teachings and all the stuff that I'm sure that was passed down after he died. And that's what they're coming. Now the next thing that this commentator, which happens to be Michael Rood, if you don't have a copy of the Chronological Gospels, you really should get one. It's very, very handy. I use it a lot when we're doing these gospel studies. And they also come with all these extravagant gifts. Well, is it possible that because Daniel had no heirs, remember he was a eunuch, he was very wealthy because he had some very prominent positions within Babylon. I mean, 3 times he was made, at least twice that I'm thinking of off the top of my head, where he was made, basically one of the most powerful people in all of the country. Is it possible that the Magi are coming with instructions from Daniel? Again, this is all speculation, but it fits. With all of his wealth to give to the Messiah. Is it possible that this frankincense and myrrh and gold actually used to belong to the prophet Daniel? And these wise men knew because they were instructed, instructions were left for them to pay attention to certain events and to know to travel to Bethlehem because of the prophecies. Let's continue with the commentary real quick here. Daniel was the overseer of all the astronomers in Babylon for more than 60 years. He was made extremely wealthy man 3 different times during his tenure as a satrap or under-ruler for 3 different kings. Yet having been made a eunuch, he had no direct descendants to whom he could bequeath his wealth. Daniel was given very specific divine revelation concerning the timing of the coming Messiah, some of which he made public and some of which he was instructed to hide, apparently. Some of the information was for him alone to understand and to act upon. When the Judeans were allowed to return to rebuild Jerusalem in the 7th year of the reign of Artaxerxes, most of the Jews stayed behind in Babylon. Mordecai and Hadassah, which means Esther, among the most famous. There is little doubt that many of the Jewish astronomers, secure in their prestige positions, continued to flourish in Babylon. So what happened to Daniel's treasure, who originally left detailed instructions and financial provisions for the journey of the astronomers? How did they know what signs to look for in the heavens that would announce the birth of the Messiah? Who set aside the treasure that was laid at the feet of Messiah? And who directed the movement of the stars and planets so that the treasure would arrive on the very day that it would be needed for their flight into Egypt and to continue their subsistence? Obviously, someone of wealth and power who had received divine revelation and supernatural motivation prepared the provisions for the future king of Israel and financed the journey of the astronomers. And the Almighty directed both the heavenly bodies and Daniel in their courses. I just found that absolutely incredible to think about. And doesn't it make so much sense? We see these wise men, but we don't ever ask the question, how did they know this information? How did they know what to look for? Where did they get their hands on this information? How did they know the timing? Where did all the wealth come from? And the Daniel the Daniel thing makes sense and fits really, really well. And I just hope that that's true. And of course, we can't really prove it, or anything like that. But man, it's something to ponder on. And that would be, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't get you guys riled up. I don't know. But for whatever reason, that thought really just, I don't know, does something. Now, and they said unto him, this is verse 5, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, and thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor, that shall rule my people Israel. All right, so whenever I see it is written by the prophets, I like to go look and see what is written by the prophets. And what we're referring to here, let me get my references pulled up, is Micah chapter 5, verse 2, when Micah prophesies about Bethlehem, which says, But thou, Bethlehem, Ephratah, though thou be little among thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me that is to be a ruler in Israel, whose going forth have been from old and from everlasting. Talking about the Messiah. Verse 7. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, and said, Go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream, they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. Verse 13. And when they were departed, behold, an angel of Yahovah appeareth to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt. And be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt I have called my son. The prophet that he's referring to is Hosea. And you can find this prophecy in Hosea chapter 11, verse 1, which says the following, When Israel was a child, I loved him, and called my son out of Egypt. And of course, Hosea is also, it's kind of a twofold prophecy. It could be also talking about when the Exodus happened. It could also be talking about this very prophecy, which is pointed out by Matthew. Verse 16. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceedingly wroth, and sent forth, and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which had diligently acquired of the wise men. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy the prophet, saying, In Ramah there was a voice heard, lamentation and weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, who would not be comforted because they are not. So Herod goes, and he has all the 2-year-old boys, any child 2 years old and under, slain. Would have been absolutely horrific. But again, the prophecy that he's referring to is Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 15, which says, Thus saith the Lord, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel weeping for her children, refused to be comforted for her children, because they were not. Continuing on. Verse 19. And when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeareth in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And he arose, and he took the young child and his mother, and he came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus, I'm having trouble saying that name, did reign in Judea, in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither, notwithstanding being warned of God in a dream, and he turned aside to the parts of Galilee. And he came and he dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. Now you might be expecting me to say, okay, let's go look up the prophecy where it says that Jesus will be called a Nazarene. Well, this is one of those things that's problematic for us, that we don't have an exact clear answer about, and that is simply this. There is no prophecy anywhere in the Torah or the Tanakh that says that the Messiah would be a Nazarene. It's just not there. Which leaves us with the question, then what is Matthew talking about? And there's two schools of thought on this, and I'll share them with you. The first school of thought is that the scripture says that he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, not necessarily written by the prophets. So it could have been a spoken word by the prophets that was just kind of orally handed down, that he would be called a Nazarene. If you were to try to Google this situation, where does it say that the Messiah would be from Nazareth, or be called a Nazarene? A lot of times that's what you'll find is the answer. Well, it was spoken by the prophets, it wasn't written by the prophets. That's one possibility. The other possibility, again, we got to give credit to the chronological Gospels. And let me get to it here, and I'll give you the rundown of what it has to say. A couple more pages here. All right. Here's the example, or here's what it says. The prophet Yeshayahu, that is to say Isaiah, prophesies that there would be a branch that shoots forth out of the stump of the family tree of Jesse, and out of its roots a netzer will spring forth. So he's referring to Isaiah chapter 53, verse 1, which says, Who hath believed our report, and whom is the arm of Yahovah revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He hath no form, no comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. So there's the thought that it's possible that we have a translation problem here or something, that really what it's referring to is a netzer, not a Nazarene, a netzer, which is a branch that grows out of the original root system, but springs up later time and somewhat distant from the original trunk. Let me continue to read the commentary here. The prophets tell us that Messiah, the son of David, will be Tezmach, a branch, out of the trunk of David. But Isaiah tells us something very specific about the Tezmach, in that he will be a netzer. The netzer will grow up out of the original root, but will be removed in time and place from the original family tree of King David. The village of the Netzaret in Galilee, the region of northern Israel, was inhabited primarily by the family of David, both Miriam, who was the bloodline of King David, through his son Solomon, and her husband, Joseph, who was of the bloodline of King David through his son Nathan, grew up in Nazareth among their distant relatives. The people of Nazareth most likely settled in the area during the Greek occupation of Israel. They named their village in recognition of their identity as a shoot, springing forth from the original root of the tree of Jesse, at a distant place and time. Both Miriam and Joseph had relatives in Beit Lachem, which means Bethlehem, which made it easy to live there after the birth of Yeshua until they had to flee into Egypt. Upon their return from Egypt, their intention was to return to Beit Lachem, but they were given divine instructions to return to Nazareth. So that is the explanation given by the chronological Gospels, that what the prophecy is actually talking about is when Isaiah says that he will be a shoot that springs forth. And this place, this region known as Nazarene, was known as Nazareth, which meant to shoot forth, the branch. And that's probably the best explanation that I've heard thus far about this issue. But just so you know, there is no prophecy that says he'll be from Nazarene, Nazareth, or that he will be a Nazarene, but it very well could be talking about Nazareth, the shoot that springs forth, which is what Nazareth was named after. So, makes sense, fits, and here's the thing. With God's Word, there's a lot of mysteries, folks. We don't always have the answer, and because we don't have the answer, it doesn't mean that there's not an answer. It simply means that we just don't have the answer. Does that make sense? We don't throw our faith away. We don't get upset. We don't start to doubt because we found one verse that we can't find an answer to. And the answer to this problem I may have just given you from the chronological Gospels. Well, hey, that's our study for this morning. I'm running out of time. I hope that it's blessed you, and if it has, you can bless me back if you want by going to scriptureandprophecy.com. You can become a Patreon monthly subscriber. You can donate. You can send snail mail. Just so you know, those of you who send snail mail, you may send it, and then it's 3 weeks later before I get it. Just so you know, it's not a problem for me. I just want you to know. Because basically I only check it every couple of weeks, so if you send it, it takes a week to get there, and I don't check it for 2 weeks, that's 3 weeks. Not a problem for me if you want to send snail mail. I just want to let you know that that's approximately how long it can take sometimes for me to receive what you're sending. So if you sent it like a check or something, wondering why nothing's been done, it's because I haven't had a chance to get to the mailbox yet. But at any rate, that wraps up this week, and I hope that you're being blessed. I love going into the studies and then looking at other scriptures that refer to it. I love it when the New Testament, especially the Gospels, talk about prophecy fulfilled, and then we can go and we can search it out and see exactly what it's talking about. We need to make those connections. A lot of Christians don't care about this stuff. But there's just something in me that wants to do the scholarly work and know what the Hebrew word was and know where it was spoken by and how they came up with this. And so anyway, I'm rambling at this point. That's the end of the broadcast. I'll be back with you, Lord willing, on Monday. Peace and grace be with all of you, and until next time, God bless.